everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. So I'm getting ready to paint a little bit more. I let my paint dry a little bit on my paper. I'm going to show you a couple other different things. So I'm adding water to the colors I want to use. And it's okay if you add water to them and you don't use them. Just let them dry out. This is my tray. I'm Miss Emma Hines, if I haven't introduced myself already. I'm going to try to do a couple other little things that are kind of cool. But I have some yellows. I have this blue. This is Prussian blue. I did ultramarine, and I did one of my, I think it was Algerian crimson. This one was Algerian something, sorry. This one was crimson, and it's up here. And I added it with yellow and a little bit of some other colors. And the biggest thing is I don't want you to worry about being perfect for this. This is us practicing laying paint down. You want to make sure that when your paper is wet, that you're very gentle with it. So we want to work light to dark. You don't want to put on big black outlines. So try to avoid using black at all. And if you want to mix colors, you can mix colors in here. And you can actually let them dry and come back later for them. So I actually have some old paint in here that I could use if I wanted like an olivey color. Or some, if I want to mix some colors that I want like, that are a little, I don't know, shadowy colors. I think that works better. That's a lot of times what I use these colors up here for, is I usually make them for shadow colors. So, everything about watercolors layers. Everything about it is thin, and you always build up. So, I am, first of all, I apologize for all the nutsy stuff that was over here earlier. I can't really zoom my camera in, so I just kind of have to work with what I get. One thing is I always try to use my light colors first, and then come back around and put dark colors over top. Or light colors, light colors, light colors. I can always add darker colors later. And I can always layer them. So let's try this light blue. We haven't really got to use this color blue yet. And everybody's going to dig right into it. You notice I am not scooping the paint up. And if you're not sure, you can always put it. You can see that this blue looks very different than this blue. This one is like more the blue that people I think of. This one has like almost a green feel to it. Very different blues. This is actually a warm blue, and this is a cool blue. So I think they kind of do different things. You can mix them with different colors and see what they do. So if I put in, now I'm just painting this on without wetting the paper. And you're going to see brush strokes. If I add water first, then you're going to see less brush strokes. So part of doing these little videos is for you to see different techniques. I don't like to see brush strokes in my watercolor until I really want them. But when I use paint and water and put it directly on paper, this is called wet on dry. And if you watched my video earlier and I was painting on a wet paper with wet paint and wet water, that is called wet on wet. So I have wet on dry and I have wet on wet. And there are two different techniques. So I want you to practice both of them, and you can practice them on your, oh look, I got a little bit too much paint. Now wet on dry, you're going to see brush strokes. They're going to create a very interesting, significant, every time you put your brush down, you're going to create a stroke. Now I can add water quickly and try to make that stroke disappear, but it doesn't always do that. If I was very light with my pencil, this would how I create an edge. Wet on dry is how you create an edge. And it's a very beautiful edge. You want to show that edge in watercolor. That's what watercolor's known for. Those really hard edges. And you're going to be able to see them with the better paper we use. This paper's kind of like practice paper, which makes a great sketchbook cover because, you make a mistake, then you can swap it out. Now I can come back over this later and take the yellow. I'll probably put something else in here for that. Oh, let's see what other colors I got. I got this beautiful orange color here. This is gonna be actually more of a brownish orange. It looks like rust. This is actually how we make a shadow color. And I'm just gonna put it up here. Now I'm painting wet on dry. I've been painting wet on dry pretty much this whole time. And this is also how I want to create strokes and edges. And the more coarse the paint and the heavier the paint, the more those strokes kind of stand out. Now I think it's hard to paint over top of something and keep that stroke if I have just blank paper underneath, so I may have to go over that with something else later. Oh, let's see, I haven't did dark green yet. Now I like greens when we mix them with color or with yellow, like you blend your colors. I like to make colors, not just use the colors that exist. I think yellow and green makes a really pretty color together. It's a very earthy color. You usually get it very nice for plants and leaves and all that. Again, I'm still working wet on dry. It's a little experimental right now. So I'm giving you a chance to kind of practice, make some brush strokes and practice what that looks like. Different brush strokes. I tend to like to use the same brushes, but I also put my brushes down here. The only one I didn't put down is this nice big one. This is a flat, probably 3/4 inch, not quite that much, but this one is a flat, about 1/4 inch. It usually has a number to it. My number might have wore off because I've had it. It's a number 8. And it's a little bit bigger than a 1/4 inch wide. This is a round. This is a number 5. This is called a liner. I'll find a dry area and I'll work on it. This is a number 2. And this is how you would make a long line, is you barely touch the paper and you just kind of drag it. This is a round and it's smaller, and I also have it's a 0, but I also have some that are even smaller than this. And here's another one from something different, but it's another little flat brush, and I think it's a number 2 or 1. Looks like it's a number 4, but it's from a different brand. Oh yes, it's a 4, so it's about half as big as this one. So some little brushes. We'll go over brushes. We keep going over brushes. Let's see. So we'll do the liner. I'll do the liner over here in some areas that we've already painted. When I use a liner and I'm wanting to actually line, this would be like eyelashes or details on the inside of a flower, or maybe edges. Barely touch the paper. But it's like one of the last things you do. So I try not to rush into it. I try to wait till I'm ready for my dark paint, because once you put dark paint down, you're not going to want to put anything on top of it, because what happens is you're going to pick that paint up. So maybe I'm ready to paint some lines on here and define some areas. I don't want to put anything else on there because I'm not going to, I'm just going to pick that paint right up that I just added to it. So I can actually draw with my paintbrush, and I use my liner a lot of times to do that. And I just keep building. I like to come back and paint a little bit more. I don't try to do it all at once. And what I'm looking for you guys to do is, after you've worked for a little bit, I want you to show me an example. I want you to take a picture of it and post it. So I want your in-progress work so I can see your progress. And if you do then finish it up, see, I'm going to add some of my, so this is my, oh look, I can do the sideways version of the liner. So I can paint almost like a calligraphy brush. And it takes a little practice. I can feather it. Feathering it is taking it and blending it a little bit. I just want pictures as you go, so I know that it's you working on it and not somebody else or somebody else's work. I try to change up the assignments, so that is why we do that, so we're not just keep working on the same thing over and over again. And there I have some like little lines that I'm adding in just for texture. I'm barely touching the paper. Again, we want to work on our darks last, so we want to do our light colors first. And anytime that something's wet, we want to work around that unless you want it to blend or bleed. So if I wanted to add something in here to this green area that I just painted, I can come in here and, so this is wet or it's fairly damp, and I add some little speckles of things in here. It's still wet. It's still going to bleed, and the more water that's loaded in my brush with this paint, the more it's going to feather out as it dries and bleed, which can be very cool. You can use your techniques and play with it and see what happens. And what I'm leading up to is teaching us how to mimic the way things look. Now we can also spritz that with water. Now I don't have a spritzer right here, but some people actually brush it with water, but I don't want to do that just yet. I want to let it dry first. So I want you to keep working on it. I have one more suggestion for you when you're working and painting, and I will always have to remind you of this. Try to consider your background before you start working on all your details. A lot of times people want to work on all their details or their name or whatever it is they're working on, and then they kind of forget about their background. Work on your background first, and then bring your foreground in. That way you're not trying to work around things. You know, work on your background, and if you get anything on that, if you want to leave something white, paint around it. Okay? Don't paint it white. Just leave it white. Leave it the same color as the paper. Other than that, that's my little quick tip, and then I will be done. And oh, one more thing. So I got these Crayolas, kind of like turquoise because it's like my thing, but so maybe I want to add some turquoise to this. Some people just can't leave water, and Crayolas are like watercolor markers. Now, I don't want these solid colors. I want them to bleed. So, if I add water, wherever that water goes, the paint's gonna go. Or in this case, the marker. It takes it a while. It takes it a little while to kind of dig in and go. So you gotta give it a little time. So after you put your color down, you don't want to use the marker too much on wet paper because it will soak all the dye out. And you don't have as much control as you do with the marker, but you can. So I wet the paper. I kind of go back and forth and play with it. I mean, everything about it is going to be experimenting. But that marker and that ink in it is watercolor, and it will bleed everywhere, and it's so much fun. And now this is a little different blue, so I might go in there, try to add that in here. And again, I can't stress it enough, you will not have much control over it, but it sure is fun. So I like dots. I can add some lines. Now, trying to do this on wet paper, yeah, it doesn't, the markers don't behave very well on wet paper. Again, you gotta be very gentle on wet paper. It will tear up the surface, but it will bleed, and it's fun, and it's pretty. And it takes a little bit. It's gotta kind of break down and blend, and wherever the water goes, the paint will go. Just kind of let it go and see what happens, and enjoy. And that's all. Have fun painting. We're going to use some of these techniques. I'm letting you play with just raw color right now. I'm going to break it down and give you some more restrictions eventually. So we're not just using blues and reds and yellows forever. So enjoy the free time while it lasts. Okay? And I will see you later.